Evening, everyone. Welcome to the faculty and staff reading of the Solstice Low Residency Master of Fine Arts and Creative Writing Program's Winter 2022 residency. I'm Quintin Collins, the program's assistant director. I am a 30-something Black male with about medium-length dreadlocks in my hair, and I am wearing a blue polo shirt with a blurred background. Before we get started, I would like to note that we acknowledge that the territory on which the Solstice program is based is that of the Pawtucket and the Massachusetts people. We honor and respect the history and continued efforts of the Native and Indigenous community leaders which make up Eastern Massachusetts and the surrounding region. This statement is one small step in acknowledging the history that brought us to reside on the land and to help us seek understanding of our place within that history. Ownership of land itself is a colonial concept. Many tribes had seasonal relationships with the land we currently inhabit. Today, the land where we are based is still home to Indigenous peoples, including the Nipmuc Nations and the Massachusetts peoples. For more information, please visit the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness and the Commission on Indian Affairs of the state of Massachusetts. Now, this is the third in a series of 3 virtual evening readings during this residency. Tonight, you will hear a sampling of 3-minute readings from Solstice instructors and staff, and we will proceed in this order. Josh Neufeld, Venise Berry, Meg Kearney, Kiely, Amy Hoffman, Kathleen Aguero, Sandra Scofield, Quintin Collins, Anne-Marie Oomen, David Yu, Laura Williams McCaffrey, Stephen Huff, and José Angel Araguz. Each reader will be introduced by a Solstice community member via a pre-recorded video. We begin with Josh Neufeld, introduced by Solstice graduate Claire McCabe.
Are you muted?
Good evening, everyone. We are going to restart that intro, and we'll be right back with you in a second. Let's see.
From Claire McCabe. Hello from Claire McCabe, 2019 alum presenting as a cartoon character. White lady, curly hair, glasses. Josh Neufeld is a cartoonist known for his works of comics journalism that have been published by Al Jazeera America, the Boston Globe, and others. He is the writer-artist of the New York Times best-selling nonfiction graphic novel, A.D., New Orleans After the Deluge, that chronicles the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. He illustrated New York Times bestseller, The Influencing Machine, that takes the reader through a graphic history of media and its inherent influences. Josh was awarded a Xeric Foundation grant for his first book, A Few Perfect Hours. He was awarded the Knight Wallace Fellowship in Journalism at the University of Michigan, the first long-form cartoonist ever admitted to the program. His books have been published in numerous languages. His illustrations have appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. Please join me in welcoming the talented and much beloved solstice mentor, Josh Neufeld.
Hello. Claire, thank you for that intro. So kind, and I love the drawing of yourself. I had trouble seeing that it wasn't actually you. This is Josh Neufeld. I'm a 50-something white guy with glasses and blonde hair and a blue shirt in my living room. And I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to present to you a quick comics piece of mine, and just have to find it. All right. And share screen. I'm allowed to share screen, I hope. There it is. Okay. So this is a collaborative piece called The Beekeeper. And it was part of a project called Next Door Neighbor, which invited a group of people in an anthology of comics to tell stories about their next door neighbor. And I actually did it in collaboration with my frequent collaborator and wife, Sari Wilson, who should be joining us any second. Any second now. Here she comes. Almost Mr. Q. Hi, Sari.
Hi, Josh.
All right, let's go.
All right. Hang on one sec. Hold on about. Hi, everyone. The Beekeeper. Story, Sari Wilson. Art, Josh. Brooklyn, 1974. My folks had bought an old house to renovate it. Behind the house was a small dirt yard that my brother and I played in.
Here he comes.
Shh. Our neighbor, Mr. James, kept bees as a hobby. Every year we got stung a few times. My folks told us that the bees died from the sting. Not that this made us feel any better. We did get all the free honey we wanted. It was dense and tasted like smoke. When I was away at college, the bees disappeared. Did Mr. James sell them? If so, why?
Have you heard of urban farming? It's where you go into low-income areas and teach people how to keep bees and goats to become self-sufficient, you know?
My neighbor used to keep bees.
No shit, in Brooklyn? Cool.
Yeah, I guess it was cool. After college, my boyfriend and I rented an apartment in a rundown section of another city. I found this dilapidated quality romantic. Across the street lived an Elvis impersonator who kept a raccoon on the roof of his backyard shed. I remembered Mr. James. Now his attempt to commune with the natural world seemed valiant, if doomed. Years later, I moved back to Brooklyn, not far from where I grew up. Now I was married with my own family. Mr. James's wife had died. His own health was not good. His daughter came to get him. He had a daughter? 4 grown kids. Really? Where did she take him?
California, I think, some kind of home.
What was his name? Huh? Mr. James's first name. Oh, John. John James.
Brought to you by Mr. Neufeld.
And Ms. Wilson. I forgot to say I'm another white lady with glasses, brown hair, and a black shirt.
I am wearing black, square. I am wearing black, square framed reading glasses. I have brown hair and a tan Caucasian face. There's a Christmas tree with white lights only behind me and a lived in downstairs of an apartment. You should all go to veniceberry.com and check out the Berry Books website because Venise has done more than I can tell in 1 minute. Among the highlights, she has written 3 national best-selling novels, and in 2018, she published Driven, a memoir. Her academic background is rooted in media studies, and her scholarly work is widely published. Her most recent book is Black Jesus, Black Twitter, and the First Black American President, Racialism and the Media. Venise has also co-authored 2 nonfiction resource books on African American film, and I love this, with her brother, Howard professor and filmmaker S. Toriano Berry. Her awards are many, and the work she does on racialism is approachable, thoughtful, and important. Again, take a look at her website, Venise Berry, spelled straight through.com. I'm blessed to have worked with her and pleased to introduce a great teacher, Venise Berry.
Thank you, Josh. Let's see here. Okay, I don't see me on here, but maybe I'm not supposed to. Oh, there I am. Okay, so I'm glad that you mentioned racialism in the media because after a lot of going back and forth, I decided I pulled a little segment from that book because that's my most recent book and that's what I've been kind of into lately. The chapter that I'm going to read a few pages from is called Science Fiction and Fantasy, Going Where Few Blacks Have Gone Before. And I think the interesting element about this book and about my academic writing is that I've always tried to make sure that even though it's academic, it's the average person can, understand and enjoy it. So hopefully, it'll be academic and formal, but it'll also be down to earth so that you can get something out of it. Representation helps us understand the world, along with how and why it works the way it does. Media programs are specifically designed to represent our world. Media scholar Shani Orgad explains that media programs and products are constructed to produce meaning through representation. She says, quote, "The process of representing is a process by which members of a culture use various systems of signs to produce meaning. Representation is therefore an active process of meaning production. The products that are media representations include both text and images," unquote. It is important to recognize that much of our experience and understanding about the world comes from those constructed images and messages in the media. In 2017, journalist Nakiti in The Root asks, why is society intent on erasing Black people in the fantasy and sci-fi imaginary worlds? There have been huge outcries about having a Black Spider-Man, an Aquaman who's African-American, or The Human Torch, and even Idris Elba playing Heimdall in Thor was criticized as a major issue. Researchers, Deal and Burgess, believe that social images have a pervasive power. They are a form of storytelling that can influence attitudes, feelings, and behavior toward others. An audience's reaction to texts and images plays a significant part, in the development of race and representation, according to sociologist Herman Gray. In my exploration of racialism, I conduct an examination of Black representation in science fiction and fantasy using the concept of Afrofuturism. Afrofuturism is a way to advance the future from a Black perspective. In the early 1990s, critic Mark Deary used the term Afrofuturism to describe the exploration of Black themes and the inclusion of Black characters in movies, music, art, and literature. On a 2015 panel in New York City, author Yatasha Womack explained her vision of Afrofuturism. It offers a highly intersectional way of looking at possible futures or alternative realities through a Black cultural lens. From a global perspective, folktales, myths, mysticism, and cultural tradition offer a broad opportunity to envision a future that does not look like the past when it comes to race and race relations. A 2014 study looked at 100 top grossing science fiction and fantasy films and found that only 8 had a main character who was non-white. And in 6 out of that 8, that one Black star was Will Smith. Most of Smith's science fiction and fantasy films have been huge hits like Independence Day, Men in Black series, I, Robot, I Am Legend, Suicide Squad, and others. There are other highlights of Afrofuturism, such as the one science fiction film that, in my opinion, took Black survival to another level in 2004. That film was Alien versus Predator, where Sanaa Lathan, the first Black woman to secure a lead role in a science fiction film, and it was the first time that a Black woman was the only member of the crew to make it out alive. Lathan played Alexa Woods, part of an Antarctica expedition, and after a satellite relayed a source of underground heat in Antarctica, their investigation found a sacrificial chamber in a temple under the ice, and they were involved in a battle between 2 alien species. Black Panther was not a movie set in the future, but it still confirmed the viability of African and African-American culture as an Afrofuturistic representation. Africa was depicted as a continent with wealth and worth, and that was an exciting image, the opposite of most messages received in the media concerning the motherland. Additionally, warrior women of Wakanda were a testament to Afrofuturism as well. The Queen Mother, Royal Guards, and Tech Genius younger sister presented positive images of Black women. In Wakanda, Black women were not waiting to be saved, they were saviors. Finally, Star Trek has made cultural advancements in Afrofuturism for many years. One year after the Supreme Court declared interracial marriage legal, the first interracial kiss on television is claimed by Star Trek. It took place in 1967 when Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura kissed. Of course, in the storyline, the two are forced by aliens to kiss, and they try to resist it, but can't. It's also important to note that Lieutenant Uhura, Nichelle Nichols was the actress, was also the first Black woman to hold a co-starring role on a science fiction television show. She was the communications officer on the Enterprise. Star Trek has also been responsible for several significantly diverse spinoffs. Star Trek Voyager introduced Captain Catherine Janeway, the first female captain in space. Captain Benjamin Sisko was the first Black commander on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And Commander Michael Burnham is the first major Black female captain, and she is on the current Star Trek Discovery. From a global perspective, Afrofuturism offers a broad opportunity to envision a future that does not look like the past, specifically when it comes to race and race relations. Science fiction and fantasy is ever-changing, therefore constructing and observing the future through an Afrocentric lens can help society better appreciate the evolution of Blackness in our world as part of a richly textured existence. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris L. Butler, and I'm a poetry and pedagogy student here in the Solstice MFA program. It is my honor to introduce our founding director, Meg Kearney. In June 2021, WordWorks Press published Meg Kearney's All Morning the Crows, winner of the 2020 Washington Prize for Poetry. Prior to that, Meg's most recent collection of poems for adults was The Ice Storm, a heroic crown published as a chapbook by Green Linen Press in 2020. Her full-length collection of poems, Home by Now, was a winner of the 2010 Penn New England L.L. Winship Award. It was also a finalist for the Patterson Poetry Prize and Forward Magazine's Book of the Year. The title poem of Home by Now is included in Garrison Keller's Good Poems, American Places Anthology. Meg's first collection of poetry, An Unkindness of Ravens, was published by Boa Editions Limited in 2001. Former United States Poet Laureate Natasha Trethewey chose Meg's poem Grackle for the 2017 Best American Poetry Anthology. Meg's poetry has also been featured on Poetry Daily and Garrison Keillor's A Writer's Almanac and has been published in publications such as Poetry, Agni, the Kenyon Review, and a myriad of other anthologies. She has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize 4 times. She is the recipient of an Individual Artist Fellowship for the New Hampshire Council for the Arts, 2010 to 2011, and was a fellow at the Virginia Center for Creative Arts 3 times. Recipient of a 2001 Artist Fellowship from the New York Foundation for the Arts, Meg also received a New York Times Fellowship and the Alice M. Sellers Academy of American Poets Award in 1998. She is a former poetry editor of Echoes, a quarterly literary journal, and past president of the Hudson Valley Writers Association of upstate New York. Meg currently resides in New Hampshire with her husband and their rescued coonhound named Winston, and their 3-legged cat Hopkins, and their 4-legged cat named Magpie. Without further ado, the founding director of the Solstice MFA program, Meg Kearney.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Chris Butler. It's very much appreciated. And thank you all out there in Zoom land for being here tonight. And thanks to Quintin Collins for running the show and Sam Cook for all you're doing in the background. I am a white woman with brown curly hair about shoulder length. I'm wearing a gray sweater. And I'm in my writing room. So behind me are books full of poetry. And the land that I am privileged to reside on and take care of is traditionally that of the Pennacook and the Abenaki peoples. So I'm going to read 2 poems, very short poems from the new book, All Morning the Crows. And I'm going to read the first poem in the book and then the last poem in the book. So as I said, they're very short. So this first one is Owl. Owl. She birthed you, but she is so unknowable. Is that the word? Try nocturnal. Each night she glides on wings silent as a vole quivering under snow. Perched on your bedroom sill, she watches you dream twitch, then spins her head to spy the snow mound ripple, sugary in moonlight, as the vole tunnels past pines. She lifts off, silent still, and you, daughter of hurt and squeal, are awake. When you sigh, your heart-shaped face aches. Is that the word? Try breaks. knowing when she dies, you'll inherit all she's swallowed whole, yet had to leave behind. And the second poem is Sparrow. And there's an epigraph from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology that says, the house sparrow takes frequent dust baths. It throws soil and dust over its body feathers, just as if it were bathing with water. Sparrow. Saint Bede said, the soul is a sparrow. It flits in one door, flutters down a hall, disappears out another door, a brownish black, soon forgotten flash. Sparrow. The word itself from the Anglo-Saxon means a flutterer. To flutter is to float. Sparrow on waves, sparrow on a pond. Or flutter is to contract, to beat irregularly. Sparrow in my heart. Or to tremble with excitement. I could barely contain my sparrow. If water flutters, there's more than a ripple. This morning, a sparrow splashes in the garden dirt like a baby in the tub. A soul, perhaps, celebrating its former body returned as promised to dust. Oh, my very being wants to believe, but my faith that sparrow flutters. So when my grave's been dug, when they lower my dust into the ground, may a host of sparrows bathe with me. May we fling that fresh earth skyward, then lift our faces as it rains back down. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte McDonald, a fiction alum from the Solstice MFA program. I'm a white young woman with medium-length brown hair and bangs, sitting in my teeny tiny studio apartment with my front door behind me and a bookshelf, wearing a cream-colored shirt. And I am here today to introduce you to Brendan Kiely. Brendan Kiely is a thoughtful writer whose young adult novels grapple with big social issues like racism and sexism, all while his characters are dealing with the issue every teenager faces, discovering who you are. As Brendan says, writing fiction is an act of social engagement. I want my work to participate in relevant cultural conversations. His most recent publication, The Other Talk, Reckoning with Our White Privilege, does just that. A few of his fiction titles are Tradition and my favorite, The Last True Love Story. During his writing career, Brendan has received several awards and has been listed as a New York Times bestselling author. His work has also been translated into multiple languages. I will be presumptive, though, in saying that his greatest achievement is being a husband and father. I had the privilege of having Brendan as my mentor during a postgraduate semester last spring. I owe him such a huge debt of gratitude for everything he has done for me. Thank you. I'm pleased to introduce Brendan Kiely.
That was great, Charlotte. Thank you for that introduction. I hope I'm visible to others. Like Venise, I'm not visible to myself. I am now. And I also, so Charlotte, thank you very much. That was super nice and sweet, and it was awesome working together, as it is working with so many folks in the program. It's an unbelievable pleasure to be here in community together with the faculty, with current students, with alums, with other people who are listening in. It's really just a privilege to be in community together. I think that's a wonderful way to start the year. and to combat the fears, the life that feels encroaching upon us, that we want to try to, hold at bay. What we can do to buoy ourselves is to be in community together, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you. I'm going to just read a short passage from the book that Charlotte mentioned. My latest book came out in the fall. It's my first nonfiction book called The Other Talk, Reckoning with Our White Privilege, in which I use stories from my own life, stories in which I'm trying to figure out who I am, as case studies to talk about what white privilege looks like, where it comes from, how it is born in the historical facts and narrative of our country, and what those statistics look like today, because it's factually true that racialism has created an unjust and unequal society. And so how better to talk about that than to, I think, approach it through a confessional perspective that is hopefully accessible for young people, but for all people in general. This section is from chapter 19 called Listening and Believing. I'm just going to read it and I'm going to tell you what it sets up. Listening and believing. You ever listen to a song over and over until you know the lyrics by heart, and then when you get to certain lines or some particular point in the song, you actually feel something in your body? Like your throat clenches just a bit, the way it does when it runs dry, when you want to hold back a tear. And it starts to feel like the singer is right there over your shoulder, watching what happened to you, and is now singing about you, is telling you, see, you are not alone. See, I saw that too. See, what you are feeling right now, that is real. And I feel it too. And feeling it together means neither of us has to feel alone. You know what I mean? This could be anyone's song. Your Lizzo, The Weeknd, Taylor Swift, whoever song it is that cocoons you deep inside your feelings. A song your gospel choir sings, something you learned at summer camp, that song you always hear your friends playing but don't know the name of, even though you know all the words. Whatever, you get my point. Some song you absolutely love because it makes your soul hum. I love music. I listen to music when I write. I listen to music when I work out. I listen to music when I'm walking to the grocery store. I listen to music when I'm on the subway. I listen to music when I'm driving, when I'm cooking dinner, when I'm doing laundry, when I'm hanging out with friends, when I'm cleaning the damn bathroom. I listen to music that makes my soul hum. And even though it's music, what I'm getting at is that it makes my soul hum because I'm open to it. I'm actually ready to be moved by it. I want to be moved by it. So here's a wild idea. What if we listen to each other like that? What if we listen to our friends like that? What if we listen to people who were telling us an important story about their life like that? Open, ready to be moved, ready to be changed. That is some kind of better listening. This is the lead up to a chapter that's about a young girl, a young Black girl in Maine at a predominantly white school who asked a question to me, a white guy who's sitting here now in front of you with blonde curly hair in front of his bookshelf behind him, and a classroom of mostly white students, to say, how come when I tell you my stories, you don't believe me? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dean Rott, and I'm a graduating fiction student here at Solstice. I'm here tonight to introduce Amy Hoffman, whose career notes and accolades are long. Amy taught at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, which is where she received her MFA, and currently teaches at Emerson College as well as here at the Solstice MFA program. She has published 3 memoirs and 2 novels, the most recent of which, Dot and Ralphie, will be released this winter, 2022, from the University of Wisconsin Press. Her books have been shortlisted for the Lambda Literary Award and the Publishing Triangle Judy Grahn Award. Her works and interviews have been published in the Boston Review, the Ocean State Review, Prairie Schooner, the Gay and Lesbian Review, and the Journal of Lesbian Studies. They have also been anthologized in the Politics of Care in Search of Stonewall and the Little Magazine in Contemporary America. Amy is a lion, in stillness until moved to action. She encouraged me and pushed me, and I will always consider it a blessing to have had her as a mentor. Please join me in welcoming Amy Hoffman.
Oh, thank you so much, Dean. That was beautiful. I always say that Solstice really specializes in beautiful introductions. I'm a middle-aged white woman with short, wavy, dark brown hair and glasses with red frames, and I'm in a sort of a nondescript room in our apartment. Like everybody else these days, I've been confused about where I can go and what I can safely do. I felt limited. So I've been reminiscing about a bike trip I took in 2019 with my old friend Richard, and I thought I'd tell you a little bit about it. The trip was self-guided, which means that a tour company arranges places for you to stay, picks up your luggage each morning so you don't have to schlep it around, and hands you a map. Enjoy. Puglia, Italy is beautiful. The sea, the ancient knotted olive trees, the stone walls, the bright flowers, the world-famous Trulli, conical white huts scattered among the fields and villages. Not that I knew anything about this place when I picked it as a destination for our bike trip. The brochure said it was flat. On previous trips, Richard and I had shared rooms to save money. This time, Richard said, "We will pay the single supplement." The decision created ironies. When I travel with my wife, we demand a double bed to the occasional chagrin of our hosts. In Puglia, even though Richard and I had specified and paid for single rooms, our hosts kept putting us together, and we had to untangle these arrangements at each stop, even though we thought our queerness was obvious. The first thing Richard and I did when we arrived in Puglia was to get lost, as always. The tour company guide picked us up at our hotel and drove us to a bike shop in town where we received our rental bikes. Then he blithely drove off, calling, "Just go back the way we came. Ciao." At a fork in the road, we took a guess. It was wrong, our usual scene. I seemed to lack the sense of object permanence that most people develop as infants, so I was sure the sign for our hotel would manifest just around the next curve. Yet the landmarks we were passing, an amusement park, a seaside restaurant, were ones we hadn't noticed before. "You always seem so sure of yourself," Richard has told me, "even though you have no idea where you are going." Then Richard's pedal fell off, but I saved the day. I had brought a pedal wrench in order to replace the pedals on the rental bike with my own, so I could use my special shoes which clip into them. I reattached Richard's pedal, impressing both him and me, since although I own a pedal wrench, I can't always figure out how to use it. Maybe I'm becoming more butch as I age, I thought. I wondered if Richard saw me differently, as more manly, perhaps. The notion was disconcerting. Puglia was hillier than we had been led to expect. Or maybe we'd just gotten old. By the end of the trip, I thought, I have never felt so physically exhausted. But I was wrong. Years before, I had worked in the kitchen of a homeless shelter. In the summer, the kitchen was 100 degrees. The dining room was a vast Sahara, which we mopped. As we were mopping, Margot, one of our poorest, maddest guests, would emerge from the bathroom. For reasons known only to Margot, she spent every morning wrapping her torso in yards and yards of toilet paper and screaming at anyone who tried to push past her to use a stall. Finally, wrung out from her ritual, she would set up one of the folding chairs we had just put away so she could sit down. She wanted to change her socks, but after the wrapping, she could no longer bend forward. I would kneel before her. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah Harper Bono, a third-term poetry student at Solstice. I'm an older white female with bright white hair, wearing a red plaid shirt, sitting in front of a pink horse painting. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce Solstice faculty member, poet, anthologist, essayist Kathleen Aguero, author of 6 poetry collections, including the forthcoming World Happiness Index from Tiger Bark Press. An incisive and lyrical poet of the mysterious process by which we become who we are, Kathleen's work inhabits that space between the mythic and the quotidian, with topics ranging from Miranda's reflections on a post-Tempest married life to Nancy Drew. Kathleen's Marriage Cone essay is a brave meditation on the complicated landscapes couples navigate, and she teaches the power of books to make a difference in the West Roxbury District Court's Changing Lives Through Literature program. The easiest thing for a reader to do is just stop reading. Encountering any example of Kathleen's work, one is always eager to go on. Please welcome Kathleen Aguero.
Okay, I can only see Amy. I didn't know if I was here or not. Thank you, Deb, for that very, very generous introduction. I'm a 72-year-old white woman with curly gray hair, wearing a pink turtleneck and a brown sweater over it and a shawl over that because it's very cold. I'm sitting in my study, so there's a bookcase behind me and also a vase of roses. And I will read 3 poems. Negative space. I reach toward my friend when she confides her bad news, then pull my hand back, subtracting touch. The quotient is empathy divided by safety. Add 6 feet to any operation. A hemisphere of empty arms, the symbol of a hug, or arms around the self, the binomial of caring. I forget all the time the equation of breath multiplied by the velocity of wind lessened by time spent together. If my sigh leaves my mouth a moment after she's spoken and hers exits 2 seconds later, will they cross in the danger zone, and which of us will be more worried? I step away, the circumference of friendship distorted. Touch always more than the sum of its parts. As some of you may remember, I've been on and off writing a series of self-portraits, and this poem belongs in that series, so it's not exactly a self-portrait. Portrait in search of itself. A vacant lot, a blank-faced rubber doll. Can I start over? Sorry, because I changed the title and I didn't make this here. Portrait in search of a self. A vacant lot, a blank-faced rubber doll that only speaks when baby pulls the cord. A mirror shines its light when people look, reflecting what it is they want to see. A hall of mirrors multiplies their dance. But what is it when no one is around? Great Zoltan, shut inside a square glass box, will turn his head. Here, put a token in, pick up his phone. He'll tell you just what your future holds, then wait, mechanical, immobile, and mute. A kettle's still until you light the flame to make the water whistle for your tea. Then it subsides, a half-filled pot, a saucer left behind. This poem was written a while ago, but thanks to mass poetry, it seems to have had a rebirth in a new context. Hard work. Hope springs eternal, but I couldn't imagine how hope, before it gets to that bubbling place, forces itself through miles of dirt packed hard, then around, over, under rocks, willing itself not to dry up in the desert or to merge with the sewer of a city street, waiting for frozen prairie to thaw, resisting the warm and mindless absorption of mud, moss, sand, swamp, until it finds the small trembling where, welcome or not, it gathers the last of its strength and breaks through to the surface the way a laboring woman, stinking, exhausted, summons one last grunt and push to force the baby into the world where it takes its first sharp breath. I bow my head to the hard work of hope. I let it place its dull and heavy hand upon my neck. I submit to its dour blessing. I give up. I begin its thankless, necessary journey. Thank you.
Hello, Solstice community. I'm Rhonda McDonald, a summer 2021 graduate in the Solstice Fiction program. I'm a white American woman with long light brown hair, wearing a light green sweater. I also have a banged up face, but don't worry, it wasn't anything serious. I'm sitting in a dark blue room in front of a bookshelf. Behind me are some of the books written by the inimitable Sandra Scofield, who I am privileged to introduce to you tonight. Among her books is Beyond Deserving, a finalist for the National Book Award. Another of her 7 novels, A Chance to See Egypt, is the winner of the Jesse H. Jones Award for Fiction. Her craft books, The Scene Book and The Last Draft, are indispensable for fiction writers. Sandra has also published a collection of essays, a collection of short stories, and a memoir. Read her fiction and you'll encounter stories crafted so finely that slipping into her worlds is effortless. Study her craft books, and she'll be with you, urging you in her fierce, compassionate way to your best writing. When I first heard Sandra read, I knew I'd be changed by her words. I hope you will be as well. I present to you Sandra Scofield.
I think this means it's time for me. Yes. Okay. Gosh, Rhonda, thank you very much for that. I am an elderly white woman with a gray ponytail, wearing a purplish jacket and cobalt blue cat eye glasses. And I'm going to read a short for you that was originally published in Narrative magazine. It's called The Sinkhole. Brett misunderstood the first signs. She had set tomato plants out in their flats during the day, thinking if it didn't get too cold, she would be able to put them in the ground the next afternoon. Jen had had one of her temper storms after school when Brett told her there was folded laundry on her bed and she should put it away first thing. Then Peter came home drunk, morose, leave me alone, drinks after work drunk. Nothing new in that. Brett made spaghetti and sat at the table eating, not angry or sad, but tired, too tired to call her family to eat with her. She made a cup of tea and stared out the window until it was dark, and she forgot about the tomato plants. After a while, the others soft-shoesed into the kitchen and ate with their heads down. She thought about gathering them in, if only her arms were long enough. She thought about singing to them, but she went to bed. The next day, when she remembered the plants and hoped it had not been too cold for them, when she put on her gardening shirt and picked up a trowel and went out to set them in the ground, they weren't there. For a moment, she felt touched. Peter or Jen had seen them coming home the night before and had brought them in. She ran back to the enclosed porch where she kept all the gardening tools and the plant starts, but the tomatoes weren't there. She stepped to the window and looked at the ground. She thought she saw a small curve like a dimple. She went outside and knelt to look closely. The ground did have a line like a seam. She scuttled away backwards, gasping. During the next 4 days, the disused chicken house, and then their old truck, and then the neighbor's house south of them, all slid into the sinkhole and disappeared. It yawned, and their bungalow sat like a sentinel on a bluff overlooking a giant jaw. They moved to a motel. At night, they huddled like refugees, keeping the television turned on so they wouldn't have to talk. During the day, Peter went to work, and Jen went to school, weary and disheveled, and Brett went back to watch. There were camera crews around the clock and scientists from the state and the university. The house was 40 feet above a slope of raw earth that dead-ended in ooze. The sinking seized its widening, but the scientists advised everyone to stay well away from the area. And what were they to do? Everything they owned was in that 1,200 square feet of spared house. It stood there waiting for them to return. And we're so lucky, Jen said. Someone in uniform told them they had to go. They took Jen to stay with one of her school friends and told her they would go back to the motel, but they didn't. They went inside their house after dark quietly like thieves. They walked slowly, softly to their bed and stripped and crawled under the sheet. Pete turned away from her and she clung to him. She lay for hours until he turned around. He touched her hair and the top of her head. He slid his hands under her breasts and over her hips. Ah, he sighed, and together they fell in, clinging, fell into whatever it was they had and were, whatever it was that had saved them and left them together above a wink in the earth, waiting to learn what that was and what was there. Thank you.
I'm Kimberly Kreinis, a Caucasian female with long blonde hair, standing in front of an Egyptian papyrus. I am a proud Solstice alum, and I'm honored to be here today to introduce our very own Quintin Collins. Quintin is not only Solstice MFA's fabulous assistant director, he is also an extraordinary writer and editor. You can find his work in Side Reel Magazine, Superstition Review, and Solstice Literary Magazine, just to name a few. Quintin is the winner of a Pushcart Prize, the 2019 Atlantis Award for the Poets Billow. He's received multiple Best of the Net nominations, and he was a finalist for the 2020 Redivitor Beacon Street Prize. Quintin's first full-length collection of poems, The Dandelion Speaks of Survival, is a masterpiece, and it was a finalist for the Ellis James Award. It's available from Cherry Castle Publishing and is a must-have for every bookshelf. His second collection of poems, Claim Tickets for Stolen People, selected by Marcus Jackson as a winner of the journal's 2020 Charles B. Wheeler Poetry Prize, is forthcoming from Ohio State University Press, Mad Creek Books next year. I await it with great anticipation. So without further ado, I give you Quintin.
Good evening, everybody. So this poem is called Kickback on the Moon, and a kickback is, in the noun sense, a party, but a more relaxed party. And this is from the new book. The moon hits me up and says it's having a kickback and says, come through. So I throw on a FUBU throwback and Jabot strap jeans like they never went out of style and hop in the car and play Parliament's Mothership Connection on repeat with the windows down and the volume loud. And I stop in Honolulu to pick up my homie on the naval base. And he steps out of the skin that he has worn for the past 6 years and grabs the fit he wore when we were younger. You know, the one with the fitted socks cap and white on white Air Force Ones. And he scrubs the toes with the toothbrush, and that skin still fits, though he has gained a little weight. And I have gained a little weight, and our hairlines have crawled further back on our scalps, but we go. and drive straight up and keep the windows down and play Janelle Monáe's The Arc Android on repeat. And I don't smoke, but my homie smokes, and he blows an exhaust trail right through the atmosphere, and we can feel the wind in our hair, even where we no longer have hair, until we can't. Until we feel our bodies rise against the seatbelts and the moon calls and asks, "Where y'all at?" And we say we'll be there in 5 minutes, and the moon says, "Niggas always late. Well, hurry up." And we drive and we pull up on the moon, but we don't plant our flag or boot prints all on the ground, because that's not what you do when you enter someone's home. And then we see all of our favorite cousins, and we shake up with the moon, who has a lake of crown in one of its craters, who pours several handles of Everclear in fruit punch and pineapple slices in another crater, who says, "We can smoke in the crib if we want, and I don't smoke, but my homie smokes," and he does. And he smokes with the moon and our brothers and our sisters and our mothers and fathers and dead niggas. And I don't smoke, but fuck it, I smoke. And the moon says, "Let go." So we all open our arms, spread them wide, and float off the surface while Sun Ra talks about the future, while everyone is happy and smiling, and we drink and sing and drink and elbow to elbow eat fried chicken wings with black-eyed peas shelled that morning, and gumbo our grandmothers have been making since that morning, and they still won't share that recipe. And we eat a second and third plate and fourth until the moon turns away from the sun, and we rest on the dark side and sleep for a day. And when the sun smacks the moon's face and wipes dusk from the moon's eyes, the moon says, "We don't have to go home, but we can't stay here." And we hug goodbye and goodbye for another day, stopping to talk every time we walk a foot closer to the car. And we finally get in and buckle our seatbelts and turn up the stereo again. And the moon says, "Hold up, you coming to the next kickback? The next one is on Mars." And thank you.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Edelman. I'm a graduating student of poetry, 61-year-old, white female with gray-brown, medium-length curly hair. I'm standing in front of a large collection of books on poetry, memoir, and the craft of writing. Anne-Marie Oomen is an award-winning conversationalist whose words reach across the borders of genre. She is a voice who speaks with connection and compassion as a mentor and writer. She considers wide conversations, the double vision of memoir. She's written 3. The necessary passion and position of essay writing. She's a poet of the everyday, where she swims with mermaids and mothers. An editor with eyes that seem to be able to see underwater. A playwright, panelist, and gentle perfectionist who makes it all seem easy. You might not know she's also a translator who's helped me to cross the bridge of understanding and connection with my own sound. Please join me in welcoming Anne-Marie Oomen.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. That's very touching. Really appreciate that. I'm going to read, just a second, I have to stop. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you, Q. How do I follow that? I'm Anne-Marie Oomen, an older white woman with chin-length ash blonde hair wearing a beige sweater. I'm at my desk in a think house, a tiny cabin lined with books on a woodlot in northern Michigan. This land was stewarded by the Council of Three Fires, Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples to whom I offer deep acknowledgement. This piece, 11, will be published in Creative Nonfiction Sunday Shorts this spring. Our family is at the county fair where my father has been lured to a side betting station. He has offered to let the carney guess my mother's age. I'm reading the last 4 sections. 8. There came a strained quiet in that plot off the fairway while my father stood and let this man study my mother's face, observe the shape of her hard shoulders under her grayed sweater, baby spit blouse, thick hands, veined wrist. It came to me suddenly. It was like looking at the prize-winning hens, how you study structure beyond the feathers. It made me want to yell at my father, but I didn't know why. It was just a bet, wasn't it? 9. Then the cigar man rose, wrote a number on a board, and my father clapped his hand, and my mother produced her driver's license as proof. And Dad said, "You owe me $1.50. My mother rose, spoke softly. I should be insulted, but I'm just glad you're wrong. And then a blur, and I cannot be sure, but it seems she put her hand over my father's, took the dollar and quarters before my father could pocket it. I think she did. I remember sharp tension, cold rippling, and later she bought the cotton candy, sweet as money. 10. And the huckster, not liking to lose, spoke to Dad. Well, now I could guess your age for double or nothing. But the look from my mother said, enough. And as we turned back to the lights and banter, I heard the huckster mutter, old before her time. I looked to see, was it the first time? My mother's white laced braid, the crown I loved wound around her head, the pure white that had come with the 5th child. I saw for that brief moment the wrinkles at her jaw, trial in her eyes. Old before her time? Her time and mine were exactly the same, weren't they? Before her time? Those words seemed to dull her crown, even in the rainbowed lights. What was time to a mother, to a daughter? What did the dollar cost us? 11. I was 11 then. I am many times that now. My mother died at 99. We thought she'd live forever. She should have. And of all the times I've touched this memory, I still resist the truth. My father sold my mother's age for $1.50 to a man who missed the softness in her palms and never heard her giggle. All that evening, she did not look at my dad, bought us those sweets, gave us the change to run the fairway freely. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and thank you for attending the Solstice faculty reading. My name is Noah Shea, and I'm a current 3rd semester student in the Solstice MFA program. Today, I have the honor of introducing David Yu, one of Solstice's many excellent faculty mentors. Those of you that know David also know that he is generous with his praise and kind with his criticism. Anyone that has heard him speak or read from his work also knows that David possesses a rich sense of humor. David has written the novel Girls for Breakfast, which was selected as a best book for teens by the New York Public Library and was a Book Sense pick. The Detention Club, Stop Me If You've Heard This One Before, which was named a Chicago Best of the Best Books pick, and a selection of essays, The Choke Artist, which was a finalist for the Massachusetts Book Award. David currently lives in Massachusetts, teaches at the Gotham Writers Workshop and at Solstice. We are all incredibly lucky to have David in our program, and myself in particular, having the honor to learn from his insights this past semester as his mentee. Thank you for all the dedication you've given to myself and to your other students.
Let's see. I think I did this. Oh, Hello. Thank you, Noah. Hello, my name is Dave Yu. I'm a middle-aged Korean male, and I'm wearing eyeglasses, a black hoodie, and several pairs of pants. Tonight, I'm going to read an entry from my journal. This is from several years ago. Saturday. Jess finally made good on her New Year's resolution and officially declared that Saturday mornings are, starting today, to be reserved for doing household chores. She was all gung-ho about it and even made one of those cardboard chore wheel thingies that annoying people like to hang on their refrigerators to impress visitors, as if anyone gives a shit. I casually dusted the TV in the living room for 40 straight minutes while my wife scoured the rest of the downstairs. Suddenly she called out, "Dave, we have a major problem." I ran over and found her frozen in the center of the kitchen. Her face was pale, and she was pointing at a dozen dark torpedoes the size of pencil shavings lying in the corner of the kitchen counter. "It's mouse poop," she whispered, so our kids wouldn't hear. I scoffed at her. "Honey, mice don't poop that much." In truth, I had no clue on the subject, but I felt pretty certain of it. I said, "Clearly, you're mistaken." Now, I've always felt, had things shaken out differently in my 20s, I might have ended up as a private investigator instead of a writer, given my, not to brag, top shelf level powers of observation and an innate ability to decisively put two and two together in startlingly fast fashion. I surveyed the scene. Directly to the right of the counter was the oven, and sitting on the nearest front burner was the charred wok that I'd used last night to make fried rice. "Aha," I said, pointing at the wok. "Mystery solved." Okay, so here's what happened. The sesame oil sputters so much when I cook that obviously it just sprayed burnt rice all over the counter. My wife was still skeptical, so I set about proving to her that it wasn't mouse poop. And how does one prove a dozen black rice-shaped things lying on your counter isn't mouse poop? Why, by casually popping several of them into your mouth and eating them in front of the doubter, of course. Duh. "See," I said, chewing with only my front teeth because the flecks were so tiny, carefully massaging the morsels with my tongue to try to coax some flavor out of them. "Yep, that is definitely burnt rice." At that, my wife was finally convinced, and I went back to the living room to resume carefully dusting the TV. A non-event, hardly worth recording in this journal, it would seem. The reason I'm writing about it is because, after the fact, I thought to do a little research online just to make sure. I looked up how to tell you have a mouse problem, and the first entry that appeared noted that the main visible cue you have a mouse problem is that you have what looks like black rice in the corners of your counters. I should be retching right now, but Jess downstairs just texted me asking why our daughter's face is all splotchy red. So I have to end this entry and go explain to my wife that Lucy's merely having a minor reaction from wearing the wacky fake mustache I crafted for her all by myself this afternoon, using rubber cement and some beautiful bird feathers I found in the backyard. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cindy Abdullah. I am a graduating student with the Solstice program. I'm a white American wearing a pink scarf. It is my pleasure to introduce my wonderful mentor, Laura Williams McCaffrey. Laura attended Barnard College of Columbia University and besides being a writer, is currently on faculty with Solstice, Pasom School, and Champlain College. Her short story, Into the Vast, published by YA Review Network, won a 2014 Magazine Merit Award for Fiction. Laura is the author of Water Shaper, which was selected for the 2007 New York Public Library Books for the Teenage List, Ali Awaking, an International Reading Association notable book, nominated for Vermont's Dorothy Canfield Fisher Award, and most recently marked a young adult dystopian fantasy. Being a mentor is one of her superpowers, and I am so grateful for her expert guidance in my writing journey. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much, Cindy. A whiplash after hearing David's reading, and then your lovely introduction. Thank you so much. I'm Laura McCaffrey. I am a 49-year-old white woman with hair that used to be brown and is now pretty silver, kind of witchy these days. And I'm in my little witch tower, which has a yellow-orange wall behind me. After talking about how I needed escape fiction, I'm not going to read something a little grim, I'm sorry to say. And this is the beginning of a kind of a very short story, a flash piece, and it is called Howling. At night, the woman lies in the dark and listens to the howls echo across the valley. One cries out, the rest answer, ululating, hungry. The walls of the house are strong, she reminds herself. The fence around the house is strong. This is not something she used to worry about long ago, when she was another person and the world was another world. That long ago seems like a story. Once upon a time, there was a girl who went to classes and studied equations. She learned how to use spreadsheets. She calculated risk. Now in the real world, she is a woman who fears early and late frosts, sudden windstorms. She cans beans, peppers, and cucumbers. She counts stacks of cans on shelves and calculates how many will remain by January, February. She used to calculate with complex formulas. Now the formula is simple. If they eat too much in December, they could starve in March. And this March is frigid. The weather forecasters said the world would get warmer, and it did, but sometimes it's colder. Cold like she never knew before, cold that can freeze her eyes shut. The loud howl, the chorus of yips and cries. The woman lies in the dark and listens to the others in the house sleep. The once strangers, now what? They aren't family. They are people like her who couldn't survive alone. Together, they have a chance. Though not all have a good chance. The baby and the children are curled on their pallet near the stove, keeping warm. The woman never sleeps near them. They're sturdy for now, but that could change quickly. Only the strong survive. The howl, the chorus, closer. They won't come too close. They can't. She almost never sees them. Once in a while, as she hauls wood, as she fetches potatoes from the root cellar, she catches a glimpse, a dirty face and suspicious eyes. Or maybe she imagines that glimpse because she blinks and the face, the eyes are gone. She still turns and runs then back to the fence and house, swiftly and silently, looking over her shoulder. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Kempsky, and I'm a brown-haired woman sitting in front of a white curtain with a blue print. And I just completed my second semester as a fiction student. And I'm so pleased to introduce the next reader, faculty member Steve Huff. A Pushcart Prize winner for fiction, he's the author of 2 collections of stories, 3 collections of poems, and a collection of essays. He's the founding publisher and editor of Tiger Bark Press, and his work has appeared in Plowshares, the Hudson Review, Kestrel, the Chautauqua Literary Review, Ted Koozer's American Life and Poetry column, among many others. And Garrison Keillor has read his poetry on the Writer's Almanac public radio program. But most importantly, he's a beloved Pine Manor teacher and mentor. As much of a fan as I am of Steve's writing, it's his passion and love for all things literary that fuels me as a developing writer and makes me aspire to put as much good work into the world as he has. Without further ado, Steve Huff.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Nicole. Thank you so much. I'm going to read two poems. The first one is, oh, I should mention, I'm an old white guy with gray hair and reading glasses and a kind of a blank screen behind me. This poem is called An American Uncle. Most Americans I know had an uncle like yours who drove a red car with a leaky gas tank that burned up one afternoon when some woman leaned on it and lit her cigarette. He played poker and screwed, this uncle. You had other uncles who screwed and nothing much happened, but locusts rose from the abyss when this uncle did, and the bells in town went clunk. You found him lying on the couch one morning, his face a rain cloud blue, and you asked your mom as you dressed for school, "Is he dead?" And she said, "Why, no, though you could tell she wasn't so sure. This uncle wrestled the devil away from the door of your house. He was the only one around who could do such a thing. And when they tumbled over the grass, they threw off jagged splinters of light. He was named for a Civil War general, but he didn't care. When he wasn't lying deathly on the couch, he was pouring cement for a dam in Ecuador or Idaho. He coaxed you into reading Ulysses, and he called you up from Bora Bora to ask if you'd finished it yet, and he knew you were lying. Shot down in World War II, he parachuted into a French whorehouse. He taught you to love Roosevelt and Billie Holiday. Unhappy women took turns marrying him, and each of them knew all the others. Your uncle, who never lived anywhere in particular, as far as you knew, and he never loved anyone but your mother and you, and somebody else who never was born, all of which made him an American uncle, I suppose. This next poem is called The Editor's Assistant. It's and it's about my relationship with my mentor in publishing, A. Poulin Jr. I was his editorial assistant. I started at BOA as his editorial assistant. I was his chauffeur, other times his Earl of Kent, weather vane, game show host, galley rower, his prefect for the doctrine when rejections had to be sent. I made his ticking martini bomb from boar's head gin with a lamb's bleat of vermouth. I erected his gate, gaitered his moat, confused the tongues of people trying to tickle his ventricles. Yet I was only his postman, the one who rented his fuck movies, rewrote the bungled blurbs by famous poets. I was his pallbearer, and minutes later his eulogist. Then I went home and growled at everyone, looking for something to do. I put on his hat and went out again. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen Austenlee, a graduating student in poetry. For the visually impaired, I'm a middle-aged white woman, shoulder-length brownish hair, wearing glasses, purplish shirt, salmon-colored walls, and a Chinese wall hanging in the background. It's my honor to introduce one of Solstice's fabulous poetry and creative nonfiction faculty José Angel Araguz. José is a Cantamundo Fellow, the author of 7 chapbooks and the collections Everything We Think We Hear, Small Fires, Until We Are Level Again, and In Empty Pots Darkness. His latest collection, We Say Yes Way Before You, is forthcoming from Black Lawrence Press. Born and raised in Corpus Christi, Texas, José earned an MFA from New York University, a PhD from the University of Cincinnati, and is an assistant professor of English at Suffolk University in Boston, where he also serves as editor-in-chief of Salamander magazine. Welcome, José.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I do have an update. The book has changed names. I'll type it in the chat here for everybody. It's called Rotura, and that's directly an order, a mandate from former poet laureate Juan Felipe Herrera. And that's a long story. My Solstice peeps, you can ask me about it at a later point. I'm happy to share. But yeah, I'm going to read 2 poems. First, I want to say I am a Latinx individual, late 30s. I have black hair. I'm wearing black glasses and a black sweater. And there's an easel behind me. So yeah, 2 poems, and they're from the upcoming collection. First one is called Night Matter. In a house without electricity, what matters is having clean paper and enough light for words. Crouched at the window by the street lamp's light, I write. When the light clicks off, ask my hand if it matters. Even when I can't tell what word lays at my fingers, I know the force and heat is my matter. My eyes make out the paper as a glow registered by some animal sense that makes it matter. The night sky fills with bits of shell and bone, or so I write in ink, in night matter. Since men learned to print, no night is wholly black. Since I learned at night, my print is wholly matter. Frost spoke of being acquainted with the night. Having words with it, neither wrong nor right, is another matter. You who read and move on to other matters, the night knows who between us must do the dying. So you can see we're going into the past there, house without electricity, down in Corpus Christi, Texas. Thank you all, my hometown. And also on that theme, this next poem is about Selena, the Tejano singer, who was murdered when I was in 7th grade. Like, it kind of ruined my whole evening at that point. So what's up with that? No, I'm just playing. It was really tragic. And anyway, I've written a number of poems about her because, you know, that's what we do with our heroes, right? We carry their stories with us. So this poem is called Selena, a study of recurrence and worry. Somebody died and it's okay to be Mexican. No, really, this is good. I was worried nobody would understand what it means to come from a city named after the recurring body of a martyr. No, really, this is good. I worried a whole generation of young women from a city named for wounds and resurrection would suffer themselves to be stilled and lost. Now, I worry a whole generation of friends close their fists around empty beer cans and walk out the door to become lost, distilled memories. You would think no one would sing here again, that with beer cans in their fists, mothers would tell stories about a ghost appearing should you sing here in this city. Should you ever go on stage, a whole generation of mothers telling stories where not a ghost, but a microphone vanishes directly below a spotlight that burns anyone who walks on stage. Different moon in a different sky where it is always night. See, a whole city vanishes below the spotlight of my erratic memory. Corpus Christi, My imagination paints you as an indifferent sky where night after night we tell stories about who we were. You are more than my erratic memory and imagination, more than the name of a wounded returned body. When at night I tell stories about Selena, I know that it is more complicated than the name on a statue, more complicated than somebody died and it's okay to be Mexican. I know life is more complicated than anyone can understand or hope to become. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much to all of our readers tonight. Many thanks to everyone who recorded an introduction for us. Many thanks in the background to Sam Cook and to our founding director, Meg Kearney, for helping run things in the back end of Zoom. And thank you all for joining us. We do appreciate you all coming out and listening. This concludes the faculty and staff reading of our Winter 2022 residency. At this time, please feel free to turn on your microphones and cameras if you so choose, and give an audible round of applause.
Yay, thank you, guys.
Yay.
Well done, well done. Hello, everybody.
Happy reading.
Bravo.
Wonderful.
Thank you all for joining us again. Have a safe and restful rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.